Once the manufacturing of the diamond core was completed, the second phase of the project was initiated. The process of manufacturing the next layers was similar to the spherical diamond coil layers. The only difference is that we needed these areas to be accessible by human personnel, given that we were building a spherical spaceship planet, which is commanded by our species. The structure itself is a sequence of layered levels accessible by cylindrical tunnels that resemble shafts, where highly advanced lifting systems move personnel, material, cargo, and platforms across all levels. There are many sizes and dimensions of shafts. The smallest are very large, capable of fitting at least 100 adult humans. The largest ones can fit multiple large spacecraft carriers. Because Earth is spherical, we designed it so the core of the planet can be accessed via the shaft systems from many locations equidistantly distributed around the surface of the planet. And then there is a visual explaining this. So as you can see here, it's becoming the pattern of human design and technology and intelligence is obvious. And this is the truth. This is the actual reality of our planet. So if you understand this, because the planet is spherical, then you would see how when you have a sphere, right, you want to have a distributed network that is equidistant to each other, a grid of different mechanisms so you can access the planet, right? Because the core, as I mentioned before, is just this area. It's just like the engine, right? It's a fusion, what we call a singular fusion generator. So it's an energy that's just creating and powering everything, right? But that's just, you know, the it, right? The thing. So it's just a generator, but that generator is what creates everything else. And all these areas, right? All these spaces, they need to be accessed by humans, right? Because it's human engineering, it's human design, it's a vessel. So we need to have access to it, which is why we have access across all the levels of the planet, right? And because the planet is a sphere, it has to be distributed, right? To account for all sorts of, gravitational relationships based on electrogravitics and differentials and telemetry, right? It's harmonious, it's structural, it's sound, it's a structurally sound structure, It's a sphere that is built in its totality by us. So because this is the nature it is, then you gotta understand that because of that, you gotta access it. And the way we did it is the surface level, which is where we live, needs to access the deepest level, which is where the core is. Not the spherical core generator itself, which is just, you don't access that because it's airtight, it's impenetrable, right? It's just this energy generator and a storage and battery and capacitor and everything and releaser, all sorts. But you need to access the first level that can monitor that, the house where you're storing that, right? Because you have all these systems built on top of it, right? So, well, that level, which is the deepest, the deeper you go into the planet, you need to access that. And then you got the surface, right? Which is huge. Planet Earth is gigantic, right? So think about how big our planet is. We manufacture these. So because it's massive, then you need to have a mechanism. And if you think in terms of geometry, you cannot have a sphere. You need to have a mechanism that is a circle, like what we call a pipe. If you look at two-dimensional, one is a sphere, but it's dimensional in terms of two dimensions, which is a circle. So it's but it's long. It's like a tube. So that's why it's a cylinder, right? So that cylinder, which that space, contains the area where you can have mechanisms called shafts, tunnels, and lifts. And in those, we move. And think of the maglev mechanism of magnetic movement and propulsion. Very similar to that in principle, but the structure is diamond, which means it's infinitely fast. So it's not metal, which has all sorts of problems. If you understand materials, metals have limits, torsion wise, and all sorts of resistors and resistance. They have limits, right, to its own design, which is the minerals. But because of the natural ability of carbon to become diamond, and diamond to be this extremely robust material that has infinite energy, the shafts themselves are built out of diamond. So because they're diamond, then we have this ability to teleport energy and through the lifts and levels at incredible fast rates. It almost feels like magic, but it isn't. It's technology. It's just we're moving at the speed of energy itself through the mechanism, which is the medium, which is that tube, which is the shaft, the mechanism. So we manifest essentially on the surface, the bottom, or any of the levels, because there's many levels, many floors, and I'll talk about it as we get into the book. But that's it. So you have many sizes, because, you know, for example, there's some of them that is for personnel for the most part. So around 100 adult humans can fit in there. And obviously you can put materials and platforms and things there, because 100 humans is it's a large, but those are the smallest ones. Then we got the very large ones, which we have because our spacecraft, you see, our planet itself is a spaceship, right? It's a sphere. But the way we build our spaceships are all spherical in nature, all of them. They're all spherical in nature. We have a fleet under the ground of a planet. We have a fleet of spherical spaceships that none of these anthropoda, or whatever they are, anthropody, these, you know, anthropoda, that species, they can't touch because they cannot interface with it. So they're just looking at it and trying to reverse engineer it. But we can command them, and we can operate these spaceships that we already have underground, waiting for us to use at will. So, and they're spherical in nature, and they're all diamond spheres. They're diamond, they're spherical, and they're operated by humans. So it's only humans that can use it. The clones cannot use them because they're not human, they're synthetics. So they're not energy, they're material. They're materials, compounds put together, chemistry, low-level chemistry. So because of that, then we have all these platforms that they all tend to be spherical in nature. So we have massive shafts, tunnels, right? And these massive mechanisms, we have levels and floors where you have entire fleets of spherical aircrafts. And some of them are aircraft carriers. But they're not aircraft carriers, they're spacecraft carriers. Meaning very large spheres commanded by humans that we can move through the levels. And those have smaller aircraft within them. There are also spherical. There are spacecraft that are smaller. So they're spacecraft carriers, but they're spherical. And within them we have smaller spherical spacecrafts that are diamond, pure diamond, that we command as a species. This is one of our fleet. It's part of one of our platforms. And we need to move around, right? And because of that, we need massive shafts. And the largest one can have multiple, 10, in fact. 10 of these massive spacecraft carriers. And each of these spacecraft carriers can carry thousands upon thousands, if not more, large spacecrafts that are essentially spherical in nature, that are commanded by a crew, a unit, squadron of humans. And you can have smaller ones that can be commanded by one. Or some of them are commanded by our thoughts, so we don't have to be piloting them. They pilot themselves with our consciousness and self-awareness. And we have a massive fleet of these underground in our platforms right now, waiting for us at our will to be commanded by the Republic of Planet Earth. Okay? And so Rafiki Ray is his eternal commander. Is its admiral of the infinite fleet. So then again, because we have this technology, then we have all sorts, right? So this is the video, and I'll talk about it the next one.